Health is not absence of disease. No, it isn't. Health is about mental, social, physical, and spiritual well-being. And there's always a confusion with dacha. In South Africa, it is called dacha, but dacha is not cannabis. Dacha is a totally different plant, which is called Leonitis leonorus. Now, Patše, mbanje, or mbanje, these are words that come from a Hindu word which is called mbang, when you look at the linguistic trail.
What is pharmacology?
Well, to put it in a very simple way, pharmacology is a subject that people study to be able to explain to you what's happening when you drink alcohol.
Oh.
Remember, initially, when a lot of people, that's the example I always give. When you drink alcohol, you start talking too much, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then after a while, you look silly, right? Pharmacology explains what's happening in your brain.
Oh.
Why is it that you're... So in other words, pharmacology is about what a substance is doing to the body.
Oh.
And what the substance, what your body does to that substance that you have taken. It may be food, or it can be alcohol. Isn't it that you get sober, isn't it? So pharmacology explains why you get sober.
Oh.
Okay? And pharmacology explains why you get hungry. Right? That is the subject. So is a subject that is taught to nurses, doctors, dentists, and veterinarians, those people who deal with animals and so forth. So they need to understand that. They need to understand why, for example, the elephant, when they eat amarula, they go crazy. Yeah, that's what pharmacology is. That's pharmacology.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, that's what the subject. That's what the subject is.
I didn't know.
That's
I'm
what
sure
it
a lot
is.
of us didn't know before. So, Prof, in your study of pharmacology, why did you take an interest in public health and nutrition?
Because remember, I've given you an example why you get hungry after eating food, isn't it?
Yes.
And I've just also explained to you why you get sober after drinking alcohol. It's all about public health. It's all about health.
Yeah.
Right? It's all about health. It's nice to be able to explain what the alcohol or aspirin does to your body and so forth and so on. It's very nice. But at the end of the day, you're taking aspirin, for example, because you've got a headache, isn't it? Okay? Why do you have that headache? Because that headache is because maybe you are worried you don't have a job.
Yeah.
That's public health.
Yeah.
So what is health? So you see, these are substances. When you talk about all these substances, they are used within a certain context, a social context. What is health? People need to understand what health is all about, right? Health is not absence of disease. No, it isn't. Health is about mental, social, physical, and spiritual well-being, isn't it? And for all those things to be in place, you ought to be eating properly, isn't it? And when things go wrong, you then take something to assist you. That's what so to me, that's what public health is all about. But at the end of the day, also, don't forget, for you to be able to eat, you have to be working, you have to have the money. So there is economics in public health and so forth. It's a wide area. So that's why I'm interested. Yeah, I can talk about the fanciful issues about what's happening to alcohol in your mind and whatnot. But I need to understand, why did you drink in the first place?
Yeah, Prof, I love that definition. I love that definition of health.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Prof, we are here sharing information. How does it relate to cannabis? Because we are speaking of health.
Yeah.
And the reason we're having this conversation is because of the plant cannabis.
Yes.
So how do you link the two together?
Cannabis is a plant that produces things that when they are taken by someone, something happens to their brain, isn't it?
Yes.
So that it is a drug. It produces drugs. So cannabis is also a plant that when it is used properly, okay, it also has nutritional values. Now you can see the link.
Oh, yeah.
The nutrition, pharmacology, and public health. And if you abuse it, it's going to cause problems, isn't it? And you get thrown behind the bars,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So so that's the link. So for me I was just concentrating on it because there's so much talk about it. There is a lot of issues.
It is related.
Yeah, stigma and all that. So it is important that it is something that people must understand, must know about.
Yeah.
It's a plant.
It's a plant.
Yeah, cannabis is a plant which produces so many things that are useful to human beings.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's very clear, Prof.
Okay.
That's very clear. So let us start by looking at the history of cannabis.
Okay.
Can you tell us about the history of where this plant
Right.
originated?
This plant originally was from Central Asia, the Himalayas. In Central Asia, that's where it originated. Okay? And that's where it is very commonly used. And people have always been using it for centuries. Okay? Now, today, it is a plant that grows anywhere on the planet, except the Arctic and the Antarctic. Yes, Arctic and the Antarctic. It can grow anywhere. So how did it spread? It spread because of trade that was taking place all over the world. Okay, but let's come to our own region, Southern Africa. How come we have it? How come it's not indigenous? A lot of people think it is indigenous, and there's always a confusion with dacha. In South Africa, it is called dacha, but dacha is not cannabis. Dacha is a totally different plant, which is called Leonidas leonorus, which was being smoked by the Khoi San people. And so when Jan van Riebeeck came to South Africa, he saw these people behaving in a certain way, and he was told by the Khoi San people, they called it dacha. That was before cannabis was known. And so now people confuse cannabis sativa with Leonidas leonorus, which is real dacha.
Wow.
Okay, now how did cannabis come into our countries? Cannabis came through the east, through Mozambique,
Okay.
by either the Arabs or the Indians. Okay, by either the Arabs or the Indians. Now, Patše, Mbanje, or Mbanje, these are words that come from a Hindu word which is called Mbang. When you look at the linguistic trail, these words are derived from a Hindu word Mbang, which was then when the Indians came to Southern Africa. The same Indians are the ones that then took it to the West Indies, where it is called Ganja. Ganja is an Indian word. It was the Indians, they were calling it that plant because they were smoking it in the cane plantations, so that the British would not know that this is what they are talking about. They would smoke it and they would work tirelessly. And so then the word ganja became popular. And that's why Rastafarians call it ganja. But it was a plant that was introduced in the Caribbean by the Indians, who were taken by the British as what we call indentured laborers, who were going to work just like the Indians who were brought to KwaZulu-Natal. It's the same when they were taking over there. So it is not an indigenous plant. But now, it is now, we call it an indigenous plant because our traditional healers now also use it, in their practice. So that's the history. It is now all over because it's a plant that is capable of growing anywhere.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
Right.
That's the information I didn't know. That's why you were here, Prof. So, Prof, this plant, it's clear that it was used for a long time.
Of
It was
course. Cultivated, used for religious purposes. And I'll tell you something. For religious purposes, because the Rastafarians, they want to use it as part of their, because Rastafarian is a religion, isn't it? They want to use it as a sacrament. Just like, I don't know, do you go to church? Or do you know in churches, in Christian churches, they use wine, isn't it?
Yes.
So their argument is, they want Ganja to be allowed to be used as their sacrament, just like wine, right? Just like wine is used in the church. Exactly. The reason why I'm bringing this up about cannabis, cannabis sativa being used for religious purposes. The Hebrews also were using it. You know what the Hebrews are? The Jews were also using it.
For
It was found. The ashes of the plant were found on an altar in 2020 in Israel. Right? So it's a plant that was also used for religious purposes. Just like the Indians were also using it the Hindus were using it for religious purposes. The Hindus use it for religious purposes.
So such a useful plant.
Yes.
How did it become demonized?
Well, okay. So the thing is, it became demonized when basically the people who are responsible for demonizing it are the Americans. Okay, the Americans, the United States of America, soon after in the 60s and the 70s. Why? Because you see, when it started getting used in the United States by blues musicians, jazz musicians, when they were playing their music after smoking it, and it does happen today. Somebody smokes it and he can play a guitar. He can play certain tunes that if you were to ask them to play them again, they're no longer under the influence. They will not be able to play it. So it was used by jazz musicians and blues. I don't know whether you're familiar with blues music.
I'm not familiar.
You're familiar with it. It was lamentations, isn't it? And there were messages that were being passed from one group of people to the other and whatnot. And then it was also music that became so popular among the children of the conservative Americans. They started mixing with blacks and understanding jazz and so forth. Okay? So in the United States, it was also at the same time that African Americans were becoming very conscious for their civil liberties. So there was civil rights, movement and protests and so forth in the United States in the 60s, 70s, right? That was also at the same time that the Afrikaners in South Africa were also becoming galvanized and then consolidating the apartheid system. Okay? So the Americans at the time were in control of the United Nations. Okay? So as a way of stopping their own children from continuing to use this substance that they were aware was being used by black Americans at that time, that's where they were called, the African Americans. They put it together in narcotic prevention in the world with cocaine, which was coming from South America, with morphine, which was coming from Afghanistan, and places like that. So they had a class of what they called narcotic substances, and they lumped cannabis together with these drugs and said anyone who trades in it, anyone who uses it, anyone who possesses it was going to be thrown behind bars. Cocaine, morphine, and cannabis. And why did the Americans get away with it? Because the British were also in support. Because at that time, cannabis had always been known that it was a painkiller. But pharmaceutical companies had come up with another type of painkillers. So they used doctors, because you could get cannabis for pain killing. It was actually used as a painkiller for menstrual pain by Queen Victoria. Cannabis as a painkiller. Okay? And a lot of people are not aware of it. A lot of people would say, but listen, I know it's not been confirmed, but it's written that Queen Victoria actually used cannabis. She had cannabis prescribed for her by a physician when she was having menstrual pain. Then, unfortunately, at the time, then the pharmaceutical companies realized, some pharmacists developed another set of painkillers, and that was the end of cannabis, because they started promoting their own pain killing. So the British then supported the Americans to say, but listen, cannabis must be put together with cocaine. Cocaine is a very good substance. It's a very good substance. There are certain drugs that have been developed from it that we use as local anesthetic. If you want your tooth to be extracted from your mouth, you're given a local anesthetic that is made from a substance derived from cocaine. Okay, but because pharmaceutical companies, right, were developing, they supported this kind of move at the United Nations. Okay. That's how it became demonized. Okay. In South Africa, like I'm saying, the Afrikaners were becoming very, very sort of, what's the word? They were nationalistic with their apartheid. And that was also at the same time, remember, ANC was found. And every country in Africa was also driving for independence from the British. Okay, so together, the conservatives and the nationalists, because South Africa at that time was part and parcel of the United Nations, they made it illegal to possess, illegal to cultivate, illegal to trade in it. That's how it was demonized. Laws were then passed, several laws were then passed in South Africa. Several laws were also then passed. There was a Marijuana Act in the United States. That if you was found to be possessing it, but their own children were now dealing in it. When we talk about capitalism today, capitalism was actually consolidated by the children of the conservatives in the United States when they started dealing in cannabis. That's the history.
That's the history.
That's the history of this plant.
Has a rich history for
it's very much so. Very much so. That is the history. So because of that, in any society, when you have laws against any substance that people use in order to change their consciousness, if you've got very hard laws, you create a subculture. It's a subculture.
The black market.
The black market. It's huge. Cannabis black market is huge.
And it's because of the same laws.
It is. Because of the same laws. And today, cocaine and morphine are huge businesses. That are huge businesses without going into any great detail. They're huge businesses. And these are the very same people, if you want to decriminalize it and legalize it, they are the very same people who stop legalization of it. Because they're making money. Because obviously, if everybody is then allowed, like now, everybody can now grow it at their own. You think people who are making money from it are happy? No. So that's how it became, demonized.
Wow. So that's legally speaking in
Yes.
terms of laws.
Yes.
But there's also a moral undertone across the culture, socially,
Right.
that people look down on users of this particular plant.
Yes.
What might be the motivation?
No. Well, it's very funny that people have got stigma. They've got stigma against people who smoke marijuana. But let's when you look at it from a moral perspective, moral people who want to be holier than thou. In any society, there's all people want to change their consciousness. In any society you can think of, there's a certain time that people want to change their consciousness, either by listening to music or taking certain substances to change their consciousness. Now, the very same people I'll ask them one question. What was the first miracle of Jesus Christ? The first miracle of Jesus Christ. Ask them, what was the first miracle of Jesus Christ? Do you know it? He turned water into what?
Into wine.
He didn't turn water into wine. He turned water into alcohol. You want to make it wine so that it sounds posh. Isn't it?
Okay.
He turned water into alcohol.
Yeah.
Where was that? That was at a wedding, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if let's talk about wine. How many wines are there?
Yeah,
There are many. How much alcohol in all of those? No. Alcohol, the percentage
different.
is different. Do you know how much it was when he turned that water into wine? Do you know how much alcohol was in that wine? I've answered your question about morality.
Yeah.
Those people who want to look down about those people who want to change their consciousness. At that time, religiously speaking, people wanted to change their consciousness at a wedding, isn't it? Don't people do that? Don't people change their consciousness at a wedding? They drink.
Yeah.
They drink beer. They drink wine. Right? It's a chemical. Isn't it? It's a chemical that locally in our society there are plants. I can show you pictures of plants that grow wild. I've given you an example, Dacha, Leonardus, it grows everywhere during the rain season. You can see it. It's used and people smoke it traditionally. So when it comes to Dacha, why do people when it comes to cannabis, why do people pretend? Yeah, you see,
It's a mystery.
it is not fair. It is because of this demonization, right? And also, I think the very fact that people who are Rastafarians, there are certain groups that in our society they also look down upon them, isn't it? Because they smoke marijuana, which has been demonized. So naturally they think, they're not okay mentally, which is not true. Because it's a religion which has decided that cannabis that's its sacrament.
For them, yes. So from the 1960s,
Yes.
when it was
70s.
legalized.
Yeah. From illegalized, yes.
Yes. So now we are seeing a lot of change. A lot of countries have legalized
Yes.
in some form or the other.
Yes.
So how did the Rastafarian people survive all those time when it was illegal?
Well, remember, I don't know whether you know Peter Tosh.
Yes.
Peter Tosh.
singer.
Yes.
The
In those days, he was one of the very first people who was saying legalize it. He's got a song called Legalize It.
I know this.
You know the song?
Yeah.
Yes. Right? it's not as if people didn't know about the science and the benefits of this plant. People have always known.
Yeah.
But when we now talk about this issue of making it, demonizing it, and making it illegal and so forth, like I told you, it was the pharmaceutical companies much earlier. Okay? It was also the conservative in the United States. Now, why were they so much? Because a lot of people were fighting or were very much against the Americans. We're making money out of the plant. Right? This plant grows in Morocco, heavy. In Turkey, Afghanistan, okay?
In abundance.
In abundance. And it was then fueling war in the Middle East. It was also fueling, some of the wars in the Middle East were being financed.
Because of
Because of cannabis. Where was the money coming from? Who needed it? People in the United States. The US dollar.
Wow. That's fascinating.
It's-
But going back to the question,
Yes.
Prof, because since it was at that time,
Yes.
it was still illegal.
Yes.
So how did those people who were adamant to
Yes.
continue using,
Yes.
surviving throughout that?
That's what you see, who are you talking about? You're talking about people in the United States. We are not talking about kids in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about kids in the United States. We're talking about the American army in Vietnam. You're not normal when you're going to war. So American soldiers in Vietnam, there was the Vietnam War. They were using it.
Okay.
They were using it.
This kind of information is public knowledge.
It's public knowledge. No, it's public knowledge.
Alright.
It's public knowledge. The American soldiers in Vietnam were using it. We're using morphine. We're using cannabis. There's no way you can go into war.
Yeah, there's no way.
Into war like that. I'm sure you've seen the movies. There's no way you can go into a war like that. You have to be you have to be in a certain state of mind.
So going forward,
Okay.
you still want to
No. Have I answered your question?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, very well.
Yes.
I-
People were making money out of it. And they're still making money out of it.
So they were using laws to
Okay.
make even more money without regulation.
Without regulations.
I hear
You see,
you've covered that.
it's a plant that when you sit down and think about it, you ask questions. There's politics, serious politics behind it.
There's politics.
There's economics behind it. What has driven the change to legalize it
Now.
are the stories that I've just told you.
Mm.
They have rewound people. People have rewound this. But listen, what is the problem? How come we're demonizing this plant in the first place? Because at that time, you could not do any research on the plant. In the United States, I'll tell you something. In the United States, if you wanted to do any study on the plant, the only seeds, the only place that you could get the seeds was the University of Mississippi. Until last year. If you wanted to do any study, until last year, you couldn't do any research in the United States.
Why were they allowed? The University of Mississippi.
Because then it becomes more easy to monitor. Who came and asked you for information? Who wanted the seeds and whatnot? So the establishment. Okay, so as we speak, how many states are in the United States? It's about 50 something, isn't it?
Yeah.
38 have said nonsense. We're legalizing it. Because they now know. there is something else that we didn't mention. As late as 1941, Ford Motor Company was making the body of a car from cannabis from hemp.
Wow.
Cars, cars were being built using cannabis sativa, hemp, right? But then at that time, oil was then discovered. Where is most of the plastic coming from? It's coming from petroleum, isn't it? Now we're talking about big companies in charge of the oil industry. They killed the cultivation of hemp and its use.
So they were the one looking for legalization.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right? Not only that, cotton. People started cultivating cotton for clothes. And yet hemp was already there. For clothes. So cotton farmers got it killed. I told you earlier, it was economics.
So basically, cotton was making more money
Yes.
for them.
Yes. Cotton was then made, ginneries, spinning ginneries were established, and you name it. Okay? And so, what do? You destroy a competitor. Painkillers were then developed. You destroy a well-known painkiller. And on and on and on. Today, hemp, you can use hemp for construction. You're killing the cement industry.
They're not happy.
Of course, they won't be happy. But all that is changing now. People are beginning to say, but listen, okay? So, to answer your question, people went back and said, but listen, why was this plant, okay? Why was this plant in the first place demonized? When the Queen of England, Queen Victoria, used it as a painkiller. When Ford Motor Company was using it as for plastic, for car bodies, right? When it can produce so many oils that can be used for different things. Why? Now all of a sudden, right? People are now beginning to say, but listen, no. We see that the history of this plant was not. It's just like apartheid, isn't it?
Yeah.
You look at it and say, well, this is
Right.
what was wrong with us living together? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because my thing about it, Prof,
Yes.
the moment I started to question
Yes.
was for the fact that it was illegal.
Yes.
Like, how a plant is natural.
It's natural.
And this plant is not poisonous.
No, any plant is poisonous. Depends
Any
on
plant?
any plant is poisonous.
Okay.
Yeah, what distinguishes, okay, now I'm going to pharmacology, which you must know a little bit. What distinguishes a poison from a plant, from a substance that is beneficial? What is it? It is the amount. Water can kill you.
Same.
Yes.
That's the same logic of vaccines.
Yes.
I get it.
Yes. It's the amount. Anything, too much of anything can kill you. Okay, so it's just that people have gone back and found that, there's absolutely nothing wrong. Actually, this plant is very useful. It's our friend.
It's a friend.
It's a friend.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is to cultivate it. But it's now big business, which we will talk about next time.
Yeah. So, but then, in conclusion of the legality stuff,
Mm-hmm.
what was the timeline for South Africa? Looking at South Africa as a country,
Yeah.
how did the change come about? Because I remember there was an announcement by the president,
Yes.
and then there was a court,
Yeah, Prince, yeah, the Rastafarian.
Can you explain that process, like from how it began to the end?
Oh yeah, like I've just explained to you. People were starting to look, people were seeing what was happening all over the world, in Europe. That people in Europe were beginning to look at the plant in a different light. In the United States, certain states like California started looking at it from a different angle and said, well, listen, what was wrong in the first place? Things change. People begin to ask questions. You see? So there was a time that there was an MP some time ago who had cancer, right? And he knew, and he had been using cannabis for pain killing. And he spoke passionately in Parliament, right, saying that I'm a cancer patient, and I don't understand why I am being denied access to cannabis. When all over the world, people are also beginning to realize that this is a very good painkiller. Like I said, it was known years that it was a very good painkiller, and people had been using it in India as a painkiller. So that's how it started. That's how it started. Then Prince, who is a Rastafarian in I think in the Cape, I think he was arrested, and he's a lawyer, so he went to court and argued argued his case.
Is it the same lawyer who was representing the Daha couple?
I think so. I think it's probably he's dreadlock.
Yeah.
Yes, that's him.
Yeah.
That's him.
Okay.
That's him, Prince.
Oh.
Yes, right. And then I think the president or certain advisors told him that, listen, we are behind. We have a legacy. Because South Africa was the one which supported the United States to make it illegal those years. And so certain people were still around. Okay. But I think the president was then, I don't know whoever he consulted. He now has a guy in the presidency. I think it's somebody called Strachan, some white guy, who's running now with the issues of cannabis. Initially it was, let's talk about hemp. Let's not talk about cannabis. But it's the same plant. It's the same plant. If you continue talking about cannabis, and you're talking about the hemp, you're actually continuing to demonize it. Okay, so in terms of timeline, like I've said earlier, people started asking questions. If this plant, there's some people who say, but listen, if you use it, and if you use it for certain period of time, you go crazy, you go mad, and so forth. The question is, it's been used in the middle of Asia, in mid-Asia. Is that full of people who are crazy?
For centuries.
And then the question also, legally, alcohol also causes problems. Nicotine also causes those problems. What is the problem with this plant? What is the problem with this plant? What is the problem with this plant? People drink because they want to change their consciousness. And if you use the Bible, I'm just giving you an example. And with tobacco, it was a plant, wild plant. And a lot of studies were then carried out to then come up with the best plant that contains good nicotine amount. So why can't we do the same thing? And besides, with nicotine, you can also use nicotine. You can use also tobacco plant for certain medical problems. And you can also use alcohol for medical problems, can't you? It's a painkiller. So people have been asking questions. Right? People have been asking questions.
I love how you break it down, Prof. Yeah, it's so obvious, but it just needs a certain perspective.
Perspective.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Prof.
Okay.
I think in conclusion, when did the law get passed to make it available without any legal difficulties for the most part for people?
Yeah, in South Africa.
Yeah, for residents.
No, actually, it wasn't very clear. Yeah, the law is not there yet.
Okay.
Yeah, the law, I don't think the law is there yet because it is to go to parliament. And then in parliament, that's what that's what people are working on. I don't know whether they've heard of Pakisa Lab. Pakisa Lab. Yeah, there's been consultations that are going on right now so that the laws can change. But in the meantime, you can't do anything about it. People are growing it. So people are now allowed to grow it. And that's why that announcement from the South African Police Services says, please take it easy.
Yeah, I'll address the
Yeah,
announcement.
yes. But you can't rule it out because there are elections next year.
You can't?
You can't rule it out because there are elections next year.
Oh, okay.
Like I told you, it's politics and economics.
Thank you so much, Prof. I think we have done justice to
Just done justice to it.
Yeah, to
Okay.
this one.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, until the next one.
No problem.